Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Boston Balling. I'm your host, Gabby Hurlbutt. I hope everyone had a good Halloween weekend. Mine was definitely fun and tiring, but very, very fun as well. So I hope everyone enjoyed it. It's getting colder here outside, at least where I am. So it's definitely into the fall weather, and like the holidays are coming up. So that's super exciting. So hope everyone's doing well overall. I am excited to have a special guest with me on the show today. He's does very good Boston sports coverage. Super passionate about the teams, just like me. Works in sports, the whole deal. I'll have him tell us a little bit about that. But Jordan, how are you doing today?
What's up? How are you? Thanks for finally having me.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad you could come on the show. And you always, like I said, you do a really good job on Twitter, and you're really passionate about the teams like me. So I'm excited to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, definitely. It's always fun talking with another Boston sports fan.
Yeah, for sure, right? Because we're a really passionate fan base, I'd like to think.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to find some of those out there.
It is, yeah, for sure. It's a great kind of sports community to be a part of as a Boston fan. But yeah, so just before we kind of start, just tell us a little bit about kind of yourself, how you started working in sports, and all that.
Yeah, so I graduated from college. I went to a small school in Maryland. Graduated from there in 2019. Then I got my master's up in Boston for journalism. So I kind of like fell in love with the Boston sports and that sort of stuff. So got it in with a news station up there called Boston 25, and then that was kind of like my in with like the sports world and stuff. And then during the pandemic, moved down to the Tampa Bay area and worked for a news station down here, and now I'm doing social media for the Athletic. So that just started in June. So yeah, I'm still in the Tampa Bay area, but obviously, my heart's still in Boston. So
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I mean, now your heart is partially in Tampa Bay, especially with Brady and Gronk being down there. But
yeah, it's a little easier to kind of fall in that Bucks bandwagon a little bit since they're in the NFC, and Brady and Gronk are down here. So it's kind of like half your childhood is down here too. So
seriously, and it's outside of that one game that they played each other in this year. There's no, like, you know what I mean? They don't really have anything to do with each other, the two teams. So it would be
yeah,
hard to. It's not like they're in our division. You know what I mean? Because then
yeah,
that would be
exactly.
way
Yeah, I
worse.
know.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, that game was sweet though too. It was cool to see like everyone like love Brady at first, and then kind of like, oh, you're not with us now, like kind of screw you kind of thing. And it's like I feel like everybody was obviously rooting for the Patriots, but like a part of them kind of wanted Brady to do good still too. So it was just a cool football like atmosphere and experience.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I was at. I was at the point where I was like, I'm obviously going to root for the Patriots because they always come first to me. But like, I still always want Brady to succeed, just not in that game.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard too, because like I mean, like Tom Brady and even Gronk, you could probably make an argument like they are like Patriots football. You know what I mean? Like obviously,
Yeah.
like Belichick is there and everything, but like that's like our whole childhood, especially like with people born in the late '90s and 2000s and stuff. Like that's all the Patriots football, you know. So it's kind of tough to like. It's like do I like the Patriots or do I like Tom Brady? You know what I mean? So
Right? It's
yeah,
so true because when you think of the Patriots, at least like somebody our age, that's what we think of. You know what I mean? That's all we really knew for like 20 years or so. So it's hard to just disassociate that. You know what I mean?
yeah. I know it's tough. It's like I know your heart's like kind of divided sometimes.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's such a strange situation. But yeah, I mean, I obviously the Patriots will always come number one to me, and then Brady's kind of like secondary now at this point.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I feel that way too. Especially like this year, like last year, it's like okay, he had his moment. All right, now it's like let's get the Patriots back on track now. So they've been doing pretty good, especially the last 2 weeks. So I'm happy for them.
Yeah, but they, the Jets are the Jets, obviously.
Yeah,
But no, they looked really good against the Chargers, and that was a huge win on the road against a good team. And that was kind of what they were lacking before was, they would play well and they would play competitive games against good teams. They just couldn't win those games. Like they played a close game against Tampa and then they played a close game against the Cowboys. I was at that game. That was crazy.
Yeah, that looked wild.
Patriots Cowboys game was awesome. And then and those are good teams, and they were playing those teams tough. They just couldn't win those games. So being able to kind of steal a win on the road against a good Chargers team kind of gives me hope for the rest of the season, because now they're at the point where they're very much not out of it right now. They just need to string together some more wins.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like obviously, if the season were to end today, I think they just missed a playoff spot in the AFC. But I mean, you have 7 teams, and like there's 17 games this season too, so it's like there's going to be plenty of chances. Even if they drop, 2 more, I still feel like there's a pretty good chance of them making the playoffs. But it's like weird because the Patriots could easily be 6-1. You know what I mean? Like they could. I mean, I think the only game that they truly lost is the Saints game. Like they just played really bad that game. So
That was just a
like
bad game overall.
yeah, like I mean, they were if Nick Folk like has 1 inch to the right, they win the Bucks game. If David Harris doesn't fumble the first game against the Dolphins, they should have easily won that game. And it's just like it's kind of like you said, like they just had a tough time like closing out games. Like they played well enough and they just couldn't close it out. And I don't know how much that is to do with like Mac or in his inexperience or anything like that, but I don't think any of the games that they lost are truly on him. So can't really blame that. I think Josh McDaniels is kind of, I don't really know how I feel about his play calling lately, but that was a part of it. But it's like it's a long season, so it's the team that's hot right now isn't going to be hot at the end of the year. So that's why I'm liking how the Patriots are at 500 now, and they can easily make a playoff push at the end.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I feel like they've been taking strides every week. They just have been looking better every week, which is good. Cause I mean, you even look back to like week 1, which still that game still to this day bothers me, because I mean, the Dolphins haven't won a game since then. So that's why that game is so frustrating to me, because that was a winnable game. And,
Yeah,
obviously, like we look back on Damian Harris and it's like, yeah, well, if he hadn't fumbled it, they probably would have won that game, which, like,
yeah,
is probably true. But also at the same time, I mean, I'm kind of with you on the play calling. I think that's been a lot more of an issue than the offense itself. Like I think Mac Jones is good. I think he's
mm,
really good and he's showing promise for the future. And I think he's come into pretty much every game and done pretty much everything that he can, really. And I mean, yesterday in the first half, especially, he didn't look fantastic. I mean, he was a little off, like his accuracy was a little off, but overall, he's been good. I mean, he's been pretty reliable. So I think he's like the furthest thing from the problem that the Patriots have had this year. And when you said they could be 6-1, that is actually 100% true. I mean, they've played games that like, or yeah, well, 7-1, I guess at this point. But
yeah,
I can't do the math right anyway, but yeah, so I think, yeah, they've had plenty of chances to win a lot more games than they have. Like they're a lot better than their record says right now. And that to me is something that is making me more hopeful for the second half of the season, because I mean that Chargers game could have gone many different ways. I mean, they could have gotten blown out by the Chargers. And so that
yeah.
was a game like I didn't really know what to expect going into that game, but they played tough, and that was a game that I think really is going to help with the momentum for the rest of the season too, and the confidence.
Yeah, you're right, and like it's so weird because the NFL is just just such an oddball kind of league because anybody can beat anyone. Like you saw the Jets beat the Bengals, and it's like, oh wow, like that just goes. I mean, I know it's the Jets, but everyone's like, oh, you beat the Jets twice and blah blah. But obviously, like the Jets aren't just like a pushover. You know what I mean? So,
I
it's
can't believe
the
they beat the Bengals.
I know, it's weird, I mean, like, it's true because, the Chargers beat the Cowboys, beat the Patriots by 1 possession. The Patriots should have easily won that game. I mean, that game, the Dolphins game, the Cowboys game, the Chargers game, they all, it's kind of always like the Patriots are beating themselves. They never truly get beat. Like, they should have won all those games. The only game was probably the Saints game. They didn't play well at all. So, I mean, 7-1, I think could, easily be the Patriots record right now, if not, 6-2, give or take. So, I mean, this is definitely a playoff caliber team in terms of talent. I think they've cleaned a lot of the stuff up in the secondary and that kind of stuff the last 2 weeks. It still hasn't been good, but that's why you have 17 games in the season. So, and then the offense seems to be doing pretty well. I mean, like as long as you have Damian Harris healthy and Mac Jones healthy, I feel like as long as they take care of the ball too, which is something that Bill Belichick's teams have always done, and they've kind of shot themselves in the foot the last couple of weeks. And it's like, wow, like I've never seen a Patriots team do that in my lifetime. So it's kind of weird to see that, but I mean, like they're getting better week by week. So and they did it a lot last game against the Chargers, and they still ended up winning that game. So I think their schedule coming up is pretty favorable. They have Panthers, Browns, Falcons, and then Titans, who are banged up now too. And then you get 2 games in 3 weeks against the Bills, so that's going to
Yeah,
be
that's gonna be tough.
probably your season right there. So, but I mean, like their schedule is probably one of the toughest in the NFL, and they're 500 right now. So I feel like as long as they get on like a little roll, like they're going to be okay.
Yeah, I mean, those are winnable games, especially the Falcons and Panthers are both games that they should be able to win.
Hmm.
Um, and I really emphasize it should because obviously you never really know, but those are games, if you look at those on paper, that I'm kind of marking tentatively as Patriots wins right now. Because I mean, if they keep playing the way they've been playing, especially the last couple of weeks, then they probably will win those games. I
Yeah.
mean, and it's one of those situations where when you say they beat themselves, I actually said that. I think it was after it was like a few games into the season, I think, and I said like, yeah, they keep like making mistakes that are preventing them from winning the games, and it's not like other teams are outplaying them. It's more like they're making stupid mistakes, or they're just turning the ball over all the time, or they're just dropping passes from Mac, and it's like it's little things like that that they kept doing that was preventing them from winning these games. And even, I mean, the Bucks game, like, and I love Nick Folk, so like this is not anything like really. I can't really bash the guy, but like it was just so disappointing that was just such a timely situation for him to miss that field goal. Which I
Yeah.
don't even think they should have kicked the field goal in the first place. I think they should have gone for it on that and trusted Mac Jones. But I'm over
Yeah,
it
I know.
now. But that was even
Especially,
just even little things like that I look back on and I'm like, had this been slightly different, they would have won that game.
yeah, exactly. And that was like what we were talking before. Like that was like 1 inch to the right, and the Patriots win that game. Like that was a really
Literally.
good kick. Like I didn't even think he was going to be that close, to be honest with you. Like they sent out the field goal unit. I was like, what are they doing? Like I think it was like 4th and 1. I was like, just get the first down, and then try to get a maybe another play, and then kick the field goal or something. And
Yeah, like get him
um,
closer.
yeah, like that's kind of the play calling that I'm talking about, like with Josh McDaniels. Like I've never really seen the Patriots do something like that. Like they're usually the aggressive ones, and they've played the first half of the season kind of conservatively, and I think you saw that open up a little bit in the Chargers game and even the Cowboys game too. So that's a good sign, but at the same time, it's like wow, like we could have at least 2 more wins. At least if the play calling was a little bit different. I think Josh McDaniels knows that. I think Bill Belichick knows that too, because I do think that he has a little bit of insight into like the offensive scheme and that sort of thing. But it's just kind of crazy to think about.
Oh, it is. No, it really is. And I mean, the defense has been pretty inconsistent overall from what we've seen so far this season. I mean, they have not been consistent at all. And that's been something that's definitely a concern for me as well, because the defense, when healthy, is a top 10 defense at least. So, you know what I mean? So, like, this is one of those situations to me where the defense needs to start being more consistent, or else I won't feel confident because, the offense can be in sync and look really good. But if the defense isn't putting up their end of the bargain, then you're going to have teams with really, really strong offenses like mowing over them. And then it's going to be harder for Mac Jones to try to compensate for that. So that's another thing that I will point out that I feel like has been kind of a concern is the inconsistency with the defense this year. And I'm hoping that that's something that kind of resolves itself. But I'm definitely still keeping an eye on that.
Yeah, I know. I think the secondary was like, the problem at first, and
Yeah,
then
I think it was
a
that.
couple games midway, like they couldn't really get pressure. So then it's like, wow, like this defense is kind of inconsistent all the way around. I think they did play a lot better against the Chargers, especially, that offense is, crazy, probably one of the best in the NFL, especially with Herbert too. And they kind of made him look like, a rookie quarterback out there. So
Yeah.
that was good to see. I feel like, I mean, that's just like the NFL. It's like whoever's hot right now, like the Ram, even though they just got Von Miller, but like you look at teams like the Rams, the Titans, those kind of teams. It's like they're hot right now, but it's a long season. Like you look at the Bucks last year, like they were not good midway through the season at all,
Oh
and it
no,
just kind of like
no.
caught fire. So it's like Obviously it helps when you have Tom Brady, but like, at the same time, like the Patriots have Bill Belichick. So it's like, and Mac Jones is playing the best of any rookie drafted, any rookie quarterback drafted this year. So, I feel confident, especially in the AFC East. I mean, the Bills, I feel like are good, obviously, but they're not, that juggernaut team that everyone kind of thought they would be. So I feel like it's kind of wide open.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about the Bills is, yeah, obviously they're a good football team and they're definitely really solid. And they're a team that I would easily probably pick to be one of the favorites to go to the Super Bowl this year. But I think that they're a more beatable team than people make them out to be. I don't think that obviously, they've been playing really good football this year, but I think that they are a team that can be beaten. And they, when it comes to the Patriots, I think if they can take one of those two games from the Bills, then that would be ideal for me because I'm not asking them to take both because I really don't see that happening. But if they can at least take one of those games, then that would be huge, I think. I mean, if you look at it, yeah, the division is not good. I mean, the Jets are better than the Dolphins right now, which is really funny to me. For one, because Dolphins fans after week one were acting like the season was over and that they had won the Super Bowl. But yeah, Dolphins fans are just one of those fan bases that just get on my nerves pretty easily. But yeah, they're so obviously they're not. We don't really have to worry about them. And the Jets are just going to be the Jets. Like they'll find a way to keep losing games. So it really is just the Bills. And so obviously the Bills are probably going to win the division. But outside of that, those wild card spots are really up for grabs right now because there's plenty of teams right now that have a chance at those spots. And I feel like the Patriots are one of those teams. And obviously, like, a couple of weeks ago, people weren't really saying that because they didn't look good before that game against the Jets, really. And, even like barely beating the Texans and stuff like that. People were like, yeah, there's no way the Patriots season is still alive. This season is over. And it's like, well, you can't really say that when we're only like 4 or 5 games into the season. Like, there's still plenty of time to turn the season around. And I feel like there's a lot of teams in the AFC that the Patriots are kind of right there with those teams. As long as they can keep winning games, I think they have a legitimate chance at, making a playoff run.
Yeah, definitely. And then like what we're gonna find out too, because their schedule coming up, obviously, the NFC South with the Falcons and the Panthers. Then you got, two big playoff teams in the AFC and the Browns and the Titans. I think the Browns are really banged up right now too.
Mhm.
They are missing like almost their entire offense, and their offense hasn't been playing well at all. So I would honestly on paper probably give the edge to the Patriots in that. And the Titans are banged up too. Obviously, like Derrick Henry's out for the year now, but then you end with the Bills, Jaguars, Dolphins. That's should be at least 2 wins, and you have the Colts in there too, who aren't playing great football. So I mean, like the end of the season is gonna tell us if they're a playoff team and if they should be a playoff team. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it's still too early to tell. I just think that, there's a lot of, there's just a lot more factors involved still, and there's a lot more games to be played. So it's like we don't really know right now what's going to happen. But if they can keep putting together wins like they did yesterday, because that was a pretty impressive win overall yesterday, if they can keep putting together wins like that, then I'll really feel a little more confident. Like, yeah, this is a playoff caliber team. And I mean, they kind of should be because on paper going into the season, they were a team that could be a playoff caliber team. It was just a matter of figuring a lot of things out. And I think it's clear that Mac is really, really developing a really good understanding of this offense and kind of how the Patriots system operates because he just seems like he's very aware. And I really like his in-game decision making. I think he's really good at just knowing what to do with the football on the field, which is completely opposite from Cam, who just would freeze up and have no idea what to do in pressure situations.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest difference too, is like Mac understands the importance of like taking care of the football. And like I think that's something too that kind of needs to slash has in the last 2 weeks rubbed off on the rest of the Patriots too, because you saw like Damian Harris from Andre Stevenson had a whole bunch of turnovers in the first couple weeks. And it's like, hey, like we gotta clean that up. I was watching something Julian Edelman does inside the NFL now. And I was listening to what he said, and he's like, I think it was after the Cowboys game or after the Texans game that they squeaked past the Texans, but still didn't really play that well. Had a bunch of turnovers, and it's like they're not playing Patriots football now. And the last few weeks, I feel like they've cleaned that up a little bit. So hopefully they can take that into the second half of the season. But I think like, Bill Belichick speaks to the importance of, taking care of the football and not like beating yourselves. And that's kind of what the Patriots did in those 3 or 4 losses. So, if they can keep that up, and they have cleaned it up in the last couple of weeks, even the Chargers game was a little fluky, like, hey, like there's a couple, bad turnovers in there.
Yeah.
But like, I still think that they can, use that momentum in the second half of the season, because that's a big win in the Chargers.
Yeah, and it's a step in the right direction because I mean they did have a couple Patriots like turnovers yesterday that we've been seeing all season, but it's like, at the end of the day, there's a lot less of those now than we saw at the beginning of the season. And so I think that's something that we can feel good about, is the fact that, they're cutting down significantly on those types of mistakes. And that was probably the biggest thing that needed to be addressed from the beginning of the season. So it's really good. It's a good thing that people are starting to kind of be more in sync now, I feel like, and a lot of those mistakes are being eliminated, which is making them actually genuinely play competitive football with other good teams.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I like how the offense has, produced the last couple of weeks too. The Chargers aren't that good of a defense. I think they actually ranked 32nd in, rush defense, which was kind of like baffling. Like, they weren't running the ball at all in the first half yesterday. That's why I'm
Yeah,
like,
they
Josh
were.
McDaniels, what are you doing? Like, why are we not running the ball? And then you saw like they ran the ball in the second half, and easy scores. But you saw that one, like they went for it on fourth down, instead of kicking the field goal in the first quarter. And then I think they did something similar in the second quarter too. And they're in territory. So like, if you look at it, the Chargers game shouldn't have even been that close. The Patriots should have won by, a couple,
Yeah.
possessions. So it's like, wow, when you dominate like a team that much, it's like, wow, like we can beat teams like the Titans and, the Browns and, whoever else we have coming up on our, so even the Bills, you saw that they struggled this week with the Dolphins too. And the Dolphins are probably one of the worst teams in the NFL right now. So,
Yeah.
I feel like, in one of those Bills games is a primetime game too. So, everyone always has adrenaline for those games too. Obviously big division game. So I feel like that might be like the turning point of the season.
Yeah, and we know, Bill Belichick has seen this Bills team before, you know what I mean? And so it's he's seen Josh Allen before, and he has an understanding of how that offense works. So I feel like he is going to have this team prepared, knowing that those are going to be big games. Cuz I mean, like you said earlier, those two games against the Bills are probably going to be arguably the most important games of the season up to that point when they happen, because those could be what solidifies, like, is this team going to be a wild card team or are they not? And if they lose both of those games, it might be really hard to come back from that and get one of those playoff spots. So that's why those games are going to be super crucial.
Yeah, exactly. And on the other hand, if you win both of those games, not expecting them to win both of them,
Yeah, not either.
obviously like Patriots
Yeah.
fans want them to win, at least one out of two. But like, if you do end up beating them, and they could have had a win against Buffalo in Buffalo last year. I think Cam turned the ball over at like the 15-yard line. So
That was
that
terrible.
was like,
That
that's
was
just like
terrible.
on Patriots football that like doesn't happen. That should have been a win. And then they play them at the end of the year, and like the Patriots season was already kind of over with. So I don't know how much you can really take from that. But yeah, I mean, like Bill Belichick's teams have done a pretty good job of, limiting Josh Allen, at least in the first part of his career. So I think this year we'll really get like a real test of like, hey, like these Patriots, can they compete with the Bills? I think last year was kind of like, I don't know if you could really test the waters on that year, because the Patriots didn't even really know what they were doing. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
like that primetime game is really big, because I think it's a Monday or Sunday night football game, and the
Yeah,
whole world's going to
Thursday,
be watching.
Sunday.
So, yeah, so the whole world's going to be watching, and it's like the Patriots kind of like have to write like that new era. You know what I mean? And so, if you win both of those games, you have a chance at the division. So,
Yeah, that is true, because it's not like the Bills are miles ahead in the division right now either. It's really only a few games that separate the two teams. So if the Bills go on a losing streak, you know what I mean, then all of a sudden it's looking more possible to win the division. And it's I mean, yeah, the Bills are solid. I mean, they're a good football team, and they definitely are one of the best teams in the AFC, but that doesn't mean that the Patriots can't beat them. And for all those reasons that we said, I feel like those are actually going to be competitive, close games. And I feel like the Patriots always play the division opponents tough too. And Belichick always has them prepared when they're playing teams in the division. So I feel like it's going to be a close game. Both of them, I think, are going to be close games. And especially now that, they have a primetime game under their belts already from this season. And Mac looked really, really good on that primetime game against the Bucks. And so the fact that he already has that under his belt now of getting acclimated to being on prime time is also a good thing, because now when he goes into that game, he already kind of knows what to expect out of that type of caliber game.
Yeah, exactly. And like no game for him is going to be, besides a playoff game maybe this year, is going to be bigger than that Bucks game, especially, with Brady
Exactly.
coming back.
Yeah.
So like there's not going to be any nerves or anything like that. And if we're looking at the Bills schedule, like they have a pretty tough schedule too. These next 2 weeks they have the Jaguars and Jets, so those will be cakewalks. But then you have
Two free
Colt,
wins there.
yeah. Then you have Colts, Saints, Patriots, Bucks, Panthers, and then
Oh, wow.
Patriots again. So like that's a tough stretch to end on. So
They're not
I
going to
feel
win
like
all those games. Yeah.
yeah, no, and like the Patriots schedule is like tough right now, and then it gets a little easier at the end of the year, and the Bills is kind of the opposite, kind of easy right now, tough at the end of the year. And so I feel like that might be good for the Patriots because obviously you want to go into the playoffs or you want to have easy games to end, your season and try to make that playoff push instead of having a really tough schedule at the end. So I think it's in the Patriots' control. Will they win these games? It's like they gotta kind of dig deep and kind of find it within themselves. But I easily think that they could beat the Bills.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I'll be really happy if they beat the Bills too, because that would be huge just in terms of just the season in general and just the overarching picture, but also just for the future. I mean, if the Patriots come out with a win against the Bills, that's going to instill a lot of confidence in Mac Jones for the future, I feel like, and just future seasons, knowing like, look, the Bills are probably going to be the toughest team in the division for a while, for years to come now, with kind of what they have going on over there. So if Mac gets a win against one win at least against that team this year, then that's going to be really good for him in the future. Like, okay, like I can beat the best team in our division. Like I got this. You know what I mean? And for a rookie, that's really important, is to be able to have that confidence going forward, because if you're going to be the future of the team, you know what I mean? Like you want to know that you can believe in yourself. And I feel like that'll be huge for somebody like him in his first season if he can get a good win against a solid divisional opponent.
Yeah, and then if he gets that win, like even him making the playoffs in his first year, and even the Patriots too, because there's so many new guys on both the offense and defensive side of the balls, like that's a huge win. Even if you just make the playoffs and don't win a game, or if you win one game, that's even a bigger thing. It's kind of like the Red Sox this year. It's like that no one really expected them to compete. No one really expected the Patriots to compete that much either. I know they spent a lot of money in free agency, but you can't expect that turnaround that fast in a couple months. So even if they make a playoff push and fall short, like yeah, that's probably where they need to be. But if they make the playoffs, I think that that's like a big win for them, just making the playoffs this season, especially in Mac's rookie year too.
Yeah, and obviously people are disappointed when their team loses in the playoffs. I mean, that just comes with being a fan. But at the same time, we have to remember it as like, last year was really a rough season for the Patriots, and there was a lot of turnover. There's just a lot of changes going on the team and everything like that. So then going into this season, it's like, okay, like we don't know how this is going to go. Like we have a rookie quarterback, like we don't know how he's going to play. We have all these new players trying to learn the system. So who knows how that's really going to work. So for me, it's like, yeah, I mean, obviously we always want them to win, but if they make the playoffs and they lose their first game, I mean, yeah, that's gonna be disappointing, but also I'll see it as a successful season still, because I'll be like, yeah, this is something that they accomplished that a lot of people probably thought they wouldn't do this year.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it's a win regardless. And like you kind of, if you look at it in another sense, like I feel like Belichick, maybe not this year, but next year, like the Patriots need to be a playoff team, especially with Bill Belichick, the greatest coach ever. Like he needs to take this team and like propel them to a playoff spot, especially next year. So that's why like this season is even bigger, because it's just kind of like a stepping stone, kind of just like the Red Sox were this season. So it's going to be good for everyone's development.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, yeah, you bringing up the Red Sox is actually yeah, that's a really good point as well, because they, obviously for them, they weren't supposed to be anywhere close to the ALCS this year. That this year was supposed to be a rebuilding year for the Red Sox. And then here we are now. And like, I mean, obviously, yeah, I wanted them to beat the Astros because it's the Astros, but also, like this really felt like in the playoffs they had that dynamic of like we're going to the World Series. You know what I mean? Like it just felt like
Yeah.
that. But at the end of the day, like I'll never complain about the season that the Red Sox had this year because they surprised everybody in a season that they weren't supposed to even be close to where they are. And they still have so much more like upward mobility. I feel like there's so much more that they're going to be doing because now they have all these good prospects in their system and they're just like on a good path. So it'll be interesting to see what Heim Bloom does in the offseason this year, and who he kind of brings on because obviously for them pitching is still the biggest concern, but I think there's a lot that they can do this offseason to hopefully kind of propel them to the top next year. Which speaking of all of this, actually, yeah, no, that we had some very emotional Red Sox related news this weekend. Jerry Remy passing away after his battle with cancer, and I did a lot of crying over the weekend, so I'm going to try and not do it now. But yeah, there's not really enough to really say to do it justice, kind of how much he really did for the Red Sox and for baseball as a whole. And just wow, just him and no, just like being able to like hear him and Don Arcio like in the box all the time, like for games, like I can't really think of a better duo to like help develop my love for baseball, really.
Yeah, I know, and it's kind of crazy too because I kind of fell in love with Jerry Remy too. Like when when I moved to Boston, like just and even before, like I knew I was gonna, come to grad school in Boston and that sort of stuff. So, I really, really wanted to get like into the culture and into the Red Sox and that sort of stuff. And like watching Nesson and watching him every night, like even just having that like New England accent and that sort of stuff, just like brought it all together. And I just think that like yeah, like it just sucks because when you think of Red Sox baseball, when you think of Nesson, you think of kind of like Don Orsillo and Jerry Remy, and it just kind of sucks. But yeah, it really I think it's even more heartbreaking because he was in the booth this season, up until July, I think it was, even
Mm-hmm.
maybe August, and then to see him throw out that first pitch in the wild card game too. And it's just like to hear the news not even a month later is like kind of heartbreaking, but definitely left his mark on the Red Sox, and like everyone that watches a Red Sox game on Nesson is gonna think of him. So it sucks, but he's in a better place now.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely never going to be the same without him for sure. Like just Red Sox Nation in general, I feel like there's always going to be something missing cuz like when you think of the Red Sox, like you really do a lot of times think of him and he was just that guy, like just playing for the team and also just being like just being so heavily involved with the team and just his passion for the game of baseball and his passion for the Red Sox, like really, really showed every time he was calling a game, I feel like. And that was something that was super special. And like, he really, really cared about the fan base too. Like, I mean, like, I still like remember the day he followed me on Twitter and I got like super excited about it. And I was like, at the time I was like, yeah, that's like super cool. But now it like is looking even more special now because now I'm like, yeah, like I'm never gonna forget something like that. Like he was just so like that's just what he did though. Like he loves like interacting with the fans and like he actually cared what people had to say like about the team, which was really cool.
Yeah, I know. I think that's one of the coolest things is to see like him follow like a whole bunch of like Red Sox Nation and that sort of stuff. Like even something so like small like that, like on a social media platform, just showed like that's how he really cared. Like in person too. Like he didn't care about like his ratio on Twitter or anything like that. Like he's just like a generally like good guy. So it really does suck to see him go. But I think he made Nesson better. He made the Red Sox better. He made Red Sox broadcasts better, and he kind of like brought the fan base closer to the Red Sox team as well. So, I mean, that's something that like is just built into the culture that Red Sox Nation will always have.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're exactly right on that. I think he really built a lot of what the culture is now, and he kind of
Mm,
brought people together, and it made people feel more connected with the players and with the team. And that's why I feel like I always say like Red Sox Nation has like something special that a lot of other teams don't have, and like that includes everybody, like the players, the coaches, like the fans, like the media, like everybody that's involved. I feel like it's just like something like really special. And I feel like he was kind of the mold that was like in the middle of all of that because he was
yeah.
he was involved with the team for so long. You know what I mean? So it's just
Yeah.
it's going to be, it still hasn't fully hit me yet, and I probably won't, to be honest with you, until next season when like when there's games going on and like we're not hearing his voice calling games anymore. But like, next year they're going to be playing for something a lot more than baseball. So it would be pretty cool if they won a World Series for him next year.
Yeah, I know, seriously. And I don't know who is kind of, I guess it might be Eckersley and O'Brien again, but they have to have, someone else to like kind of fill that, third role in case one of them are out. So it'd be cool to see, new faces and that sort of stuff, but it's
One
just
of
good to see
us.
like,
No, I'm
yeah,
kidding.
exactly.
That'd be nice.
But yeah, yeah. But it's cool. Like it's cool to see like that culture will and his style will always like be a part of the broadcast too. So that's kind of what I like.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's like, I mean, first when Don Rocio left, I was like, it's not going to be the same without him. But like now it's even really,
Yeah,
things are just never going to be the same again. Like, you know what I mean? Because those two together, like, you can't really beat that, I feel like. And it's just so it's never going to go matched. I feel like just the energy that they brought and like how well they would feed off of each other and just how much fun they had. Like when they were
yeah.
in the booth together was always cool to see too.
I know it's like a new era. It's like a
Yeah, it is.
again like we were talking about Patriots football is a new era, but like this is gonna be a new era too. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, we need to. I don't know if we can trade broadcasters, but we need to work out a trade with the Padres to get Don back to the Red Sox.
Right. Like, listen, Padres, like, you guys don't need him. Like, you don't appreciate him as much as we do. So if you could just give him back to us, I would really appreciate it.
Yeah, exactly. Seriously,
You
we need to
you
work
could have
that
like
out.
Dennis Eckersley or somebody like
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Yeah. No, but yeah, it's definitely really sad. It was definitely super emotional. But the Red Sox, I mean, I'm so glad he got to experience the Red Sox this season and what they did do and just the season that they put together and how far they went into the playoffs and that he was here for all of that. Like I think that is super special. And the Red Sox are, like next year is it's going to be interesting in general to just see what they do, but also like just the fact that they're going to be playing like for something beyond baseball. I just feel like there's going to be, I don't know, maybe they'll put something special together next year, but there's work that needs to be done. Like they still need to address the pitching. I mean, like they definitely need another starter, and the bullpen obviously needs a lot of work because that still was pretty much the weakest point of the team this year. So things need to happen, but I kind of trust that Bloom will do things to make that happen. Because like I mean, I was really impressed by everybody he brought on this year for the most part. Like it was players that like aren't the best players on paper, but just work here. Like Kike and like Hunter Renfro, like players like that like were kind of underrated before the season, but just really, really shined here. And I think it's because like he has a way of picking out those players that kind of fit your team and fit like your culture. And I feel like that's something that Bloom is good at. So he's able to kind of figure out like, oh yeah, this person would work well in Boston.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like a big part of that is like you have to kind of look at what he did in Tampa too, because that's how the Rays are built every single year. And I don't want him to bring that style and that kind of like, oh, we're gonna trade the player before he gets, really
Yes.
bad or something like that. And I don't want him to, go the cheap route all the time. And I don't think he will, but I want him to like bring that culture of like, hey, like, we're gonna get a Hunter Renfro or Kike Hernandez who's gonna make our team better, whether the fan base thinks it or not. Like these guys kind of need that chance to play every day. And you saw, that happen with, even Christian Arroyo and obviously Renfro and Kike and that sort of stuff. But even like, getting Verdugo and that Mookie trade, that's really underrated. I feel like people don't really know. But Verdugo wasn't an everyday player in LA and he comes to Boston. Obviously, like, he's done very well, I think personally, since coming to the Red Sox. And I kind of want Bloom to do that, like, and bring that culture to Boston that he had in Tampa with getting those players, that everyone, might not turn heads, right when they sign them and stuff, but it's going to work out in the end. Like you saw Nick Pivetta too is another really good example. But I also think that he does need to spend money in some places. And I think this is the first off season that he has like the books opened up where he can spend a little more money with, some of the, I think some of the Mookie money is coming out. Some Pablo Sandoval money, I think is still coming off
Yeah,
the books too.
that is actually
So,
true. Yeah.
so like, I don't know if they're going to spend, a whole bunch because of that, but they're going to have to spend, on pitching and maybe JD Martinez if he opts out and then wants a new kind of deal or something like that. So, Schwarber too, that sort of thing. And then an extension of Kike if they want to, they kind of have to, start thinking about that too. So, I think that he will, open up the checkbooks a little bit. I don't think he's going to get any kind of, big name superstars, but I also don't think that the Red Sox need a big name superstar either. So, just kind of, break that bullpen down a little bit, I feel, and get like, some back end of the bullpen pieces, because that's ultimately what hurt the Red Sox in the long run. So if we can get the pitching situated and that sort of stuff, I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, the bullpen, yeah, there was just not enough reliable pieces in the bullpen this year, and that seriously became an issue, or it was an issue pretty much the whole season. And they were able to get away with it for the most part because the offense was so good. But then, in some of these postseason games, it just was really, really evident that they were lacking key pieces in the bullpen. And I mean, no offense to Matt Barnes. I mean, I love Matt Barnes. He's a UConn guy. I grew up like less than 15 minutes from UConn. So like I'm a little biased there, but like he's not a closer. Like we need somebody that actually is a legitimate closer, because I love Matt Barnes as like, that eighth inning bridge guy. I feel like that's kind of a much better spot for him. And at the first half of the season, obviously he was an all-star closer. I mean, he was pitching really well. He just something fell off the rails in the second half for him. And I don't think that that's really sustainable. And it'll be interesting to see what he does with some of these other guys too. Like, I mean, like, Ottavino or like guys like that can be moved. It's going to be interesting to see who he decides to keep, because by the end of the season, the only one that I really trusted out of the bullpen fully was Garrett Whitlock. Everybody else, it was always like you didn't know what you were going to get. Am I going to get the good version of Sawamura or the bad version? Am I going to get the good version of Hansel Robles or the one that gives up like 5 runs in an inning? You know what I mean? So like the only
Yeah.
one I didn't really have those like mixed thoughts about really was Whitlock, because for the most part, you knew that he was going to come out and get the job done.
Yeah, yeah, I know exactly. I think like you don't need a big name in the bullpen either. Like you don't have to go out and get like a big name guy. Like you can just get guys that fill the roles and that sort of stuff. Obviously, like it'd be nice to have a closer, but at the same time, you saw other guys step up and be the closer in the playoffs too. So
Yeah.
you can kind of make that closer role, I feel, and it might open your eyes to someone else. So like I think someone that comes to mind that wasn't necessarily our closer, but Ryan Brazier, like he was pretty solid, like in the playoffs and towards the end of the season. Obviously, in the Astros series got lit up a little bit, but that's a guy that's it's like a role player that kind of opened your eyes. Like if this player can play every day, if he can pitch every day, like it might be some in the tank that you don't know. You're seeing that with the Braves too in the World Series. Like they had a couple bullpen games in the World Series that they started a guy that's never even started. And I think like baseball is kind of going towards that instead of like the big name players. Like you saw the Nationals kind of start that off when they won the World Series a couple years ago too. So I feel like, Heim Bloom kind of sees that. And the Dodgers do a lot of that too, and that's probably why they're successful a lot too. But they also have a paybook or paycheck, give out paychecks just like the Yankees do, so it's a little easier for them. But that's why I kind of respect the Rays, because they're doing that same thing of getting those role players and those bullpen guys, and might not like it, but it works. So that's why I like I want Bloom to do a mix of like spending and getting those kind of role players, and that I feel like Boston's a perfect market that you can do that in too.
Yeah, because I mean, with the Rays, yeah, there needs to be that happy medium, because with the Rays, I mean, he obviously did a good job there. I mean, they won 100 baseball games this year, and that's a team that's going to compete. You know what I mean, with the roster that they put together over there. But
Yeah,
they're not really a playoff caliber team, because they don't really go out and spend really much of anything to get like big, like when they got Nelson Cruz, that was like the biggest thing the Rays have really done. Like that kind of surprised me still, even that they went and got him, but that's just not really the Rays way. So I don't want it to be to that extent, because then I feel like it's going to be one of those situations where they're just good enough, but not good enough to actually go all the way, which I feel like is kind of where the Rays are at, where they're going to be competitive. They're going to be a tough team to face. But then when it comes to the postseason, I don't think they're really built for October. So there needs to be like that happy medium, but you don't want to be like the Yankees who just go and spend money right and left all the time, but then just can't win anything with it either, because the Yankees are very much about like, spending, getting big name players like Anthony Rizzo and Joey Gallo and players like that. But they
Yeah.
don't always work together and they don't always mesh really. And I feel like that's what made the Red Sox a better team than the Yankees this year, is because the Red Sox are very much more of like a culture type of environment and a culture type of mentality more so than the Yankees, I feel like. And so you don't want to, you don't want either of those two extremes. Like you want to be that organization that's in the middle, that's doing a little bit of what the Yankees are doing and a little bit of what the Rays are doing.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a good point too, and I think the Red Sox management knows that too. I think if Bloom really wanted to go out and get a player, like you heard talks at the trade deadline about Scherzer. Obviously, you're going to have to like trade for him and then sign him to an extension probably. And I think like you're probably going to see that too with Schwarber. I think he eventually ends up coming back to Boston. I don't see why the Red Sox wouldn't really give him what he wants, because he was such a pivotal part of why they were successful in the playoffs. So I feel like Red Sox management understands that too. And it's like, hey, like we have the product to win right now. So we need these kind of role players. And if you need a big arm like Scherzer or someone like that, like we'll, open up the checkbooks to kind of give you, what you need. But I also think that Bloom is smart enough to be like, hey, like we don't need Scherzer. We don't need these big superstars. Like we can get them for a lower price and save money here so that we can spend more money here. And you might see that for like a second baseman too this winner, and because I mean, like Christian Arroyo is good, but he can't really stay healthy, and he struggled a bit in the playoffs. So it'd be nice, he's a nice, role player, and but I don't know if he's an everyday player. So we'll see what happens with the second base, whether Kike goes there full time and we get an outfielder or something like that. But I'm excited to see what he does. Like it's not going to turn heads if when you see the Red Sox made a trade come across your screen in the winter, you're gonna be like, oh, who is that? You'll have to like do a little bit of research, I feel, on them.
Yeah.
But I think it's gonna work out good for them in the long
Yeah,
run.
yeah. It's gonna be one of those things where people are gonna be like, I've never even heard of this guy before. Like, who is this and what is he gonna do for this team? But then like it'll be one of those guys that just like fits right in here and ends up being like that piece that they need. And I feel like that's what happened with when he got Schwarber, because it's like, yeah, I mean, his defense isn't good, but that's not why he was here. Like, you know what I mean? Like he was here to really enhance that lineup, because the bottom half of the lineup was a little bit on the weaker side until he really came in. And then they had the ability to move people around and put some of their stronger hitters in that bottom half of the order. So he really did help a lot with that. And so that's why I really hope that they give him some good money, because I mean, I'd almost rather JD opts out and have Schwarber be like the regular DH, to be honest.
Yeah, I know. It's not the end of the world if JD opts out anyway. I mean, he's getting up there in age, and like
Yeah.
it's good. Like I love JD like more than anyone probably, but it's kind of you kind of look at someone and you're like, hey, like you're a really good player, but at the same time, like might be time to part ways, and I think he knows that too. I think he's gonna opt out and probably try to get more money, but the Red Sox, he could still opt out and then sign back with the Red Sox, so it's not the end of the world. And then like I mean, I love JD, so it's like kind of the thing where like be careful what you wish for, because he struggled a little bit more than he typically has, but he's still hitting over 280, still has over 30 home runs, near 100 RBIs. So it's like I don't really know if you're gonna find that anywhere else, but Bloom might look at like Hunter Renfroe and think that he can get another player just like that to replace JD, and then obviously you have Schwarber fill that DH role. So it's cool. Obviously, you have Cassis coming up too, and Duran maybe if you don't want to trade him. I don't know what that's looking like though, but
That's
I
really interesting.
something I actually thought about is like we kind of have Jeter down sitting in the minor leagues right now, and he's like kind of decent, but like is he really gonna come to Boston and play at the big league level? Like I'd kind of like to see them flip him for like some pitching, because that's a shortstop that's a top 10 shortstop in someone's farm system that it's kind of just sitting in our farm system. I don't really know if we have plans of using him. So why not flip him for some pitching? Because that's actually what we need.
Yeah, because they could get good pitchers for somebody like him too, because he's actually a desirable player. You know what I mean? Like he's young and
Yeah.
he's really good at his position, and he's somebody that could really make an impact. And I guess it's just a matter of, is he a part of the future of this team or not? And I'm thinking as of right now, the answer might be no. So I feel like he is a possibility. That's a really good point of somebody that they could actually move around and get some good pitching, which addresses an immediate need right now. Whereas if you keep Jeter Downs in the system, and he's not going to be up for a while as it is because I mean, we have Xander playing that position right now, first of all, anyway, who I think
Yeah.
still might get shifted over time anyway. Like we might not see him at shortstop.
Yeah.
Like it depends kind of, I think, how everything kind of works itself out there. But yeah, I mean, this is somebody that they're not going to use for a while that it's like, why not take advantage of that? And you can get like top notch pitching that you can put into like to use as bullpen pieces. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. That's a good point.
and then, yeah, because I think, I mean, obviously we know they can hit. It really comes down to the pitching. If they just make a few moves to fix the pitching, and obviously like defense is still a little bit of a concern as well in general, but outside of the outfield. But yeah, I think, that's something that can kind of be addressed along the way as well. But I think overall they need to prioritize pitching. And if they can do that, then I think they could be right back here at this time next year.
Yeah, exactly. And like this year only gave them confidence to be like, hey, like we're 2 wins away from the World Series. Like we're not even supposed to make the playoffs. So that's what I really like, and that's what like every Red Sox fan should be really excited for because I feel like that the Red Sox can only get better from here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's definitely a huge confidence booster for the players for sure that they're like, yeah, we can actually do this. Like we can compete with the best teams in the league. And I mean, even just the fact that they eliminated Tampa Bay in the playoffs, which nobody thought they were going to do either, that in itself builds confidence too. So I feel like they're just at the point now where they really are, they can be confident in what they put together and they can go into next season and be like, we actually want to go all the way this time, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I feel like. That's why I'm saying like every Red Sox fan should be excited for that because they can only get better, honestly, especially with Alex Cora as manager.
Exactly. Alex Cora is such a good manager for this team, and he really is very much like a player's coach, and he really helps drive that culture. And I think that that's huge. And he helps motivate them, and everybody collectively together were really fun to watch this year because you could tell how much they really wanted it. And that's not going to change, I think, because most of these players are going to be back next year. So I think they're going to come back next year like guns blazing and be like, we are not done. Like we fell short last year, and we're not going to do that this time.
Yeah, exactly. And like that's the same thing that we were talking about with like Jerry Remy too, is like that culture is like where it needs to be right now, especially with those players coming back and that sort of stuff. So I don't know. It was just I don't know if it's just me or what, but like I feel like this year was the funnest I've had watching the Red Sox, like a Red Sox team that didn't win the World Series because like I just felt
Oh
like this
yeah,
team could have
yeah.
easily won the World Series. It's like so many ups and downs, but like it was more ups than downs at the end of the year, and it's just like kind of left a good taste in your mouth. Like obviously the Astros series sucked, but they really had no business even like being in that series with them. I think like obviously everyone got their hopes up when they took the 2-1 lead, but in reality, like talent wise, like that Astros team is a lot better than them. So
Yeah.
especially experience wise too. But you'll probably see the Astros, break up at the end of this World Series run because Correa is a free agent, that sort of stuff. So I mean, they're still going to be good, but I think next year the Red Sox should beat them in a series.
Yeah, I think that this might be the last year that this Astros team will be able to really make an actual serious World Series run. I mean, they could still be a playoff team next year. They're still going to have enough talent on that team. I just think that this is that last year because this is the last year where that core is all going to be together. So I
Yeah,
think that this might be kind of it for the Astros. But you're right. I mean, overall, like the Astros are just a better team and they're a lot more experienced. They all know what it's like to be in the postseason and in this spot. So yeah, at the end of the day, it's upsetting. And I hope the Braves close out that series in Houston. But also like I'm really excited about the Red Sox. I think there's a lot to be excited about. And I think they're gonna come out next year and be like, yeah, they're gonna want it even more now that they know that it's possible for them.
yeah, I know. I
Yeah.
think that's just like everyone should be excited. I know like the players are too, the Red Sox fan base will too, but it'll be fun, like especially watching this team like in spring training and stuff, and like seeing how they develop even more like throughout the spring training and to the start of the season. It's just like it just like makes me feel excited just even talking about it. So it'll be fun next season, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree with you. I think, there's a lot to be excited about in Boston sports in general. Just being a Boston sports fan in general is fun for one, because we get a lot of wins for our teams, which is nice. But yeah,
Yeah,
no, I'm
exactly.
excited too. I think there's just a lot of optimism there. both with them and with the Patriots. So we'll just have to see what happens there. But I really appreciate you joining me on the show. This was fantastic. Just let everybody know like where they can find you and like follow you before we
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on. I always like to come on any kind of Boston sports podcast for sure. It's always fun talking to your favorite team. But yeah, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at iJordanMoore. So kind of always posting sports. Obviously, predominantly Boston sports, but World Series been tweeting about that too. Football Sundays, so it's fun. Yeah, so yeah, give me a follow.
Yeah, that's pretty much what all mine is too. So
Yeah, exactly.
primarily Boston sports heavy and then other like random games that I'm watching. But
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
no, he's awesome, everyone. Like I definitely recommend you checking him out, like following him on social media. And I mean, as always, thank you for tuning into the show. I always really appreciate everyone's constant support. Really means a lot to me. And I hope everyone has a great rest of the week. And well, while we're on the subject, like go Boston, everything. I was gonna say go Patriots, but then I was like, well, then I have to list all the other teams. So I'm just gonna say like go Boston teams in general.
Yeah, exactly. Go Boston, everything.
But have a good one, everybody.